Hi, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me today are Jeff Reinke and Andy Zoll. I'm Anna Wells. We're editors of Manufacturing Net and Industrial Equipment News, and we have each 15 years of experience covering the industry. So each week, as always, we cover the top 5 stories that are big in our audience, the stuff that people are viewing the most, and we talk about the implications of those stories. So before we get going, just as a reminder, please make sure that you like, subscribe to, and share the podcast. You can also sign up for our daily e-newsletters to get the podcast in your inbox first. Please leave us a positive review if you can on whatever platform you use. And finally, to email us, you can reach us at Jeff, Anna, or Andy at in.com or David at in.com. He's not here this week, but just use email the podcast in the subject line so we can sift through that adequately. We are live every Thursday at 2. We're trying to be more consistent about that. We're like 3 weeks in a row, I think. Same time, same place. So knock on wood. Hope to see more of you in the live chat. We love that. So feel free to post comments throughout and we'll get to them. Before we get going, how's everybody doing this week? Jeff, how's it going?
I'm good. I think we got a lot of interesting energy out before the podcast went live.
What does that mean?
A lot of interesting banter in terms of people's enthusiasm and thoughts and different things that we've been going on in the office here. So I think it's good we got that up beforehand.
It's important to compartmentalize in this line of work.
Yeah, we had to get some...
Anna is a very different person when the camera's off. So watch out. Watch out with those emails.
Yeah, everybody, watch out. Not true. I just had some technical difficulties at the beginning that, and then let loose a few choice words in response to those. That's what anyone would do in that case. All right. So, Andy, good to have you.
Yeah, always good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Okay, so before we get started, let's talk about our sponsor really quick. We have a word from our sponsor. So 10 years ago, many were skeptical about the predicted 1.5 million battery electric vehicle sales by 2021. Nonetheless, reality has surpassed expectations there. So today, experts foresee continued growth in the plug-in vehicle market. And we have a white paper from Parker that covers 9 emerging trends that are shaping the future of electric transportation and how they're impacting other industries. So please download the 9 emerging trends in electric transportation. It's a pretty interesting read. It's available at the link below. We'll be sending out some more, I think, info about that as well if you're interested, but please check it out if you can. All right. Should we get to it?
Let's go.
I'm capable of doing this, by the way, guys. I feel like...
Without swearing.
Yes, I can do it. Without swearing.
It's happened before.
See.
Yeah. It has.
It's happened before. It's not unprecedented.
There's a lot of abbreviations and acronyms in this first story, so I don't know, maybe not. We'll see. Our first story, the 5th most popular story on our website this week, BAE Systems delivers new amphibious combat vehicle test variant to the Marine Corps. BAE Systems delivered the first production representative test vehicle, or PRTV, of the new Amphibious Combat Vehicle 30mm cannon, or the ACV-30 variant, to the U.S. Marine Corps for testing. ACV-30 is the 3rd variant in the ACV family of vehicles since BAE Systems got the contract in 2018. The vehicle mounts a stabilized medium-caliber remote turret system manufactured by Kongsberg that is said to provide the lethality and protection Marines need while leaving ample room for troop capacity and payload while keeping the crew under armor. BAE Systems is currently in full-rate production with the ACV Personnel variant and the ACV Command and Control variant, and is on contract for the design and development of an ACV recovery variant, which will provide direct field support, maintenance, and recovery to the ACV family of vehicles. Jeff, this is interesting technology. I think it got a lot of people's attention because of, BAE has been putting out more and more of these variants. What do you think about this particular technology and what it can do for the military?
Yeah, I guess 2 things really caught my attention. First of all, the remote controlled turret. Just sees another example of how the military is doing more and more to sort of remove soldiers from the line of fire or take away some of these potentially lethal situations. Obviously, the other option is to have somebody up there firing and moving the turret. So if we can do that from a remote controlled capacity, that adds to social soldier welfare, which is always a plus. I think the other thing, and you can't look past this, is the amphibious nature. We continue to see more of these amphibious type assault vehicles. It represents a real shift. For a while there, when we had a lot of things going on in the Middle East, these were sort of these were vehicles that were tactical, meant for like inner city, close quarter type of fighting. A lot of armor, a lot of speed and quickness handling type of capabilities were really important there. Here, we're looking at amphibious, which is obviously, we're going on the beach. And right now, when you think about military hotspots, there's no way that this is not about things that are going on, not right now, but potentially could be a target in China. With a lot of the things going on there, heating up again in Taiwan, and also in Ukraine. We've seen a lot of different developments come out of that development between Russia and Ukraine, and amphibious vehicles is one of the things that they're using the Ukrainians are using to their advantage in sort of winning back some of these key areas of their country. So when you see a lot of this military technology, I think other applications we see, this is what we need, or it's leading to something, or it's a prominent need down the road. For a lot, what we're looking at here, this is right now.
Yeah.
These are things that we need right now or potentially into the future, again, with a lot of things kind of bubbling up in Asia.
Yeah, and I think evidence of that, the need for it right now, is just these orders with BAE on these variants keep repeating. They keep coming up with more targeted applications for them. So obviously they're seeing the need for this there. Andy, what did you think about this? Obviously, the Marines have a lot of money tied up in this contract with BAE. What were your thoughts when you saw the story?
It's my impression, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that not this vehicle in particular, but the amphibious program overall is replacing vehicles, I think, from the 70s. So this is a decades old program that almost certainly needs an overhaul. The test program that we're talking about here specifically, that's a part of an $88 million contract. That's not so this, if it's evaluated and goes through the testing, then it'll go for the production contract. So this is just for the test vehicles is $88 million. So it's given BAE's history with this, you'd hope it goes through the same process as their previous variants in this program, and everybody will get their money's worth and let Marines do their jobs.
Yes, absolutely. BAE has had a lot going on too this week. I just saw that it was announced that they acquired a company called Malloy Aeronautics earlier this week, and that's a British technology business that specializes in heavy lift drone and aeronautical technologies. So lots of irons in the fire for BAE right now. All right, moving on to our next most popular story. Airline head says Boeing in last chance Saloon. Boeing's reputation has taken a beating lately after high-profile maintenance and equipment failures. Now, Sir Tim Clark, president of Emirates Airline, has warned that Boeing doesn't have much runway left. Clark told the Financial Times that Boeing is in the last chance saloon. I had to look this up. Apparently, this is a term that people use.
I was just impressed with the whole fitting runway in there.
Yeah,
That was a David type thing.
Oh,
well done.
I think it was Ben, actually. It was Ben's words. Yeah.
All right.
No, credit where credit is due. Back to it. So Clark's company's engineers are planning to personally overlook Boeing's manufacturing operations, which he says have deteriorated as the company has put profits ahead of engineering excellence. Clark added the review is necessary to make sure Boeing did not cut corners, and his comments pile on to other frustrations expressed by airline executives. Boeing announced that it found more problems with the fuselage on its 737 earlier this week, requiring rework on 50 undelivered planes. This time the issue revolves around improperly drilled holes, which were discovered by Spirit Aerosystems, one of Boeing's biggest suppliers, as we know. It's been a disastrous couple of weeks for Boeing. Andy, what do you think about what's going on here?
I don't know about you guys, but it always seems like whenever I'm about to get on a flight, I have to do a deep dive into airplane safety.
That's right.
Just a pattern I seem to come up with.
Yeah.
I
do. Do you know what your airplane model is?
I haven't looked, and it feels pointless to look, so
Maybe
I'll probably
don't.
just wing it.
Yeah, don't look.
No pun intended.
You did it again. It's contagious.
Yeah. Off to a roaring start here. So anyway, that notwithstanding, this has been 5 years for Boeing. Ever since the problems with the 737 MAX 8, which was 5 years ago now, as fast as that's gone, regulators, airlines have been pleading with them to shape up and really part of the issue here is that if you're an airline, you can either go to Boeing or Airbus, really, for as far as major aerospace manufacturers go. So they've been saying, hey, Boeing, we need you to shape up. But at some point, if there's only two places to go, there's only, two places to go. So it would be, you have to wonder at what point enough becomes enough for these airlines to be like, we're not going to deal with this anymore with this safety record, and we're going to go with Airbus or another company that becomes an option down the road. So, that notwithstanding, even since this story ran, their week's gotten even worse. They're staring down the barrel of contentious negotiations with their largest union over their next 10-year contract. And the head of the FAA basically said they're halfway through their review of this thing, and they already can tell lawmakers that they're not paying enough attention to safety. So, it's not been a good week for Boeing.
Not great. And I think to add to that too, it looks like the NTSB just confirmed what had been speculated with the Alaska Airlines incident and the door, that 3 out of 4 of those key bolts were missing. And so that's that's what happened there. So, Jeff, with all that being said, what role do you think the airlines do play in this whole scenario and making sure that this change occurs?
They're the ones that'll change the game. There's no one else that can do it. Consumers, airline passengers can complain and speculate and look at as much as they want to. I mean, I even saw, I think it was Kayak had a filter you could apply by the type of plane when selecting your tickets. But what are you going to do? Because Andy alluded to, when you look at the entire commercial aerospace market, and it's tough because it's broken down on different size of planes and everything else, but there's basically 5 players that control 90% of the market. And guess what? There's only 2 that use these large body international type planes. It's Airbus and Boeing, like Andy said. So if you're an airline, what are you going to do? If you basically go this other route and you say, I'm ditching Boeing, and just to offer a little perspective here, Emirates is a major player here. They do have a ton of each Airbus and Boeing planes. It's a little bit more heavy Boeing fleet, but they also signed this huge deal last fall for like $50 billion for another 200 Boeing planes. So it's not just your current fleet, it's what you've got, what you're planning on having down the road. So it does, for Emirates to come out and say this, that is a big deal, and they do carry a lot of weight. This isn't a small airline or a small customer stating this. But again, going back to when you look at this at a little bit more macro perspective, if the airlines do start playing tough with Boeing, they're basically shooting themselves in the foot, because then there's no negotiating power when it comes to purchasing these planes, because there's only one other company there, which is Airbus. So you're almost legislating yourself into a monopoly of sorts, which you don't want to do. So what it's going to take is the airlines, I think, stepping in. I don't know how you change a culture like the one at Boeing. If the FAA is halfway through an investigation, NTSB, which one is it?
Yeah, NTSB.
Is halfway through their investigation, and they're already saying like, this is horrible. I mean, that's incredible. So it feels to me like the airlines are going to have to sort of come together. And I don't know if it's sticking more money into some of these other types of aviation suppliers who aren't necessarily in passenger aircraft. But if you look at a Northrop Grumman, or if you look at a Lockheed, they have the manufacturing infrastructure at least to make it plausible. These other companies, if you look at Embraer or some of the others, this is not what they do. They are not going to adjust their manufacturing capacity to all of a sudden start building these wide body jumbo jets.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
So there's limited options there. I don't know if Boeing is one of those too big to fail type of companies, or what the dynamic is there. I don't know what the solution is, other than trying to boost up some of these other companies to give them more competition.
Yeah, you do get definitely a too big to fail vibe from Boeing at this point when you think about, the near monopoly that these companies are facing. Emirates President Clark referred to a progressive decline in Boeing's standards, which he put down to long-running management and governance missteps. He even called out a couple of the executives, including Calhoun, the CEO, by name.
Wow.
And he's not the only one who is really taking a stand publicly. Alaska Airlines CEO said that he's angry. United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby said that his company will seriously consider alternatives to Boeing. I think all the airlines are frustrated and angry, and for some painted into a corner, as you guys have, alluded to. And it's obviously impacting their brand reputation and profitability with these grounded planes. But I think they also have a vested interest in collectively pinning this all on Boeing. Like we know that not every case has been as clear cut as some of them, right? There have been some maybe maintenance oversights as well on the part of the airlines. I think Alaska Airlines is, correct me if I'm wrong, being possibly sued about the warning light that they did not respond to. But they don't want to absorb that. They want to make it Boeing's issue to solve. And it is largely Boeing's problem to solve. But, for them to all pile on at once, I think it's an easy way for them to deflect what role they did have in some of these incidents, not all, in order to make it a manufacturer defect, quality, whatever issue, and nothing to do with them.
There's something to be said for negotiating through the press, too, a little bit here, as far as calling them out publicly and very, explicitly. That's another part of the strategy to kind of push them toward, it's one thing to say you're going to look at alternatives. It's one thing to actually do it. So
exactly. And I think this came up too with the MAX issues, a couple years back. There was a lot of this. There was a lot of threats and a lot of orders canceled and then later reissued kind of quietly. And so they do have a lot of leverage in this scenario to kind of do that stuff and play games if they need to. I don't know. So
well, I think it's the other thing that we have kind of going on here too is as horrible as those tragedies were, they weren't here. They weren't in the U.S. with a U.S. company. And even though there was no fatalities associated with these safety issues, people caught it on cell phones. It's gone much more viral. And the other thing that's interesting too with the airlines is, and we'll get into this with another story we have coming up, there is a shared responsibility without a doubt. The airlines do play a part in this as well. I mean, after all, they're the ones operating the planes, but it does get into this whole, well, it's his plane. Yeah, but you're flying it. Yeah, but it's your plane. And they go back and forth to shift it. So that is a good point in terms of the shared accountability that's associated here.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to our third most popular story this week. This is a very interesting story. The title of which is Terrifying Hack Makes Automotive Radar Hallucinate. Researchers from Duke University have demonstrated a system they've dubbed Mad Radar in an attempt to understand how automotive radar sensors, can be fooled into believing almost anything is possible. They paint an ominous picture, speculating a scenario where the hacked system sees and believes that there's a car hurtling towards you, enabling autopilot to swerve the vehicle into a ditch. They then suggest the real risk. The hackers are approaching your disabled vehicle as the final piece of the nefarious plot. It was a very dramatic story, all speculative. But anyway, the researchers do say that the phantom cars can trick a radar in the blink of an eye, and that they're urging automakers to safeguard this technology against these potential threats, saying that there needs to be a fundamental change in how these systems are designed. Previously to this, radar systems were generally insulated from attack because the operating parameters would vary widely from vehicle to vehicle. But Mad Radar shows the capabilities of a radar spoofing system that they say can accurately detect a car's radar parameters in less than a quarter of a second. Once they've been discovered, the system can send out its own radar signals to fool the target's radar. In demonstrations, they showed that it's capable of adding vehicles that don't exist, eliminating those that do, and even making it look like a real vehicle has suddenly changed course. So really feels like some creepy dystopian tech film where hackers take over your car and then try to, I don't know, steal your organs. I'm not sure what the end game is there, but scary nonetheless. Andy, what were your thoughts on this story?
I think it's important to just have a caveat, first of all, that these high-tech driver assistance systems and eventually autonomous driving unequivocally make roads safer. Mm-hmm. They just do it because their margin for error is so much better than human drivers. But there's always unintended consequences, not with this, just with this, but with everything. And this is important research, if dramatic, that shows what some of those unintended consequences could be. Whether or not it's likely or there's an end game, that's not really the point of the study. So basically, you only hope that this gets the attention of automakers, but probably more importantly, regulators, to ensure that as they're going through the process of approving these systems and NHTSA, that sort of thing, that they're ensuring that these companies have safeguarded their systems against these sorts of hacks.
Yeah, you kind of wonder if the technology, when it's being developed, that these vulnerabilities, that the security part is just an afterthought. Do you think that that's true, Jeff? I mean, I know you're kind of our veteran cybersecurity guy here.
Well, there's a couple things here. First of all, the good news is this hack does not remove the human being from the driving, from behind the steering wheel. It does not automatically darken windows and windshields. So you can still see what's going on. Okay. You can still control the car by turning off the autopilot and things like that. So in this case, these guys are ethical hackers. They are also trying to promote their capabilities as well. That does not take away from the fact that this is a huge threat. And what this comes down to, I mean, in a lot of cases when we talk about where does the accountability or responsibility for security lie, it's almost like that Saturday Night Live Night at the Roxbury type skit, where the guys are at the bar and like the girls point to him like, me, him, you, me, you, me, him. Because nobody wants to take responsibility for who is actually going to implement or pay for developing cybersecurity for a lot of this stuff. The OEs are saying, well, hey, we sold the car. That's on the consumer. The consumer's going, yeah, but I bought the car from you. And then the OE's going, yeah, but these guys over here supplied all the guts and all the internal electronics for this. They have to secure it. The bottom line is it's a shared responsibility. For the overwhelming majority of these really bad hacks that we hear about, in a lot of instances, it does start with the human element. It starts with somebody writing their password on a Post-it note and putting it on their computer monitor. It starts with not doing stuff like double-factor authentication for sensitive information. So in some of these cases, and in this in particular, especially when we're dealing with the automotive sector, in a lot of these automotive hacks, there are things that the driver can do, okay, to help make their vehicle more secure when they're doing this. Now, in this case, this is a little bit different because it's talking about the operations of the vehicle. But anytime you're sending a signal out, and it's wireless, and it's not internally enclosed, if you will, you're always going to be susceptible to a hack. This is part of the ongoing threat of all this new wireless technology and all this more interconnected dynamics. It's great that you can order, Grubhub from your car while you're on your way home, but the other side of that is your phone's not a secure device. So they can get in there and they can get your credit card number and anything else that they want to too. It's this ongoing evolution of technology and security that everyone needs to play a part of because we're all a part of the whole, the whole cycle. The other thing I'll say, Andy, autonomous vehicles will be safer. Yeah. I would argue right now, the way it is in its current shape, it's not, because there have been there have been reliability issues, in my opinion, when you've got somebody not paying attention or not using it correctly.
With self-driving, quote self-driving, right? Not with these autonomous. What we're talking about here is the
level 1,
automated
level 2
cruise control type thing following on the highway. The researchers did make a point, because you did mention that drivers can still see through the windshield even though there's these systems in place. They did make a point of mentioning that at night this is particularly dangerous.
That's fair.
So that's the only thing I neglected to bring up that I should have.
And I think that in the scenario they painted, it was like an autonomous system kind of taking over like you would in like a lane, where they pulled the vehicle out of the way because it was this impending crash that the vehicle thought was going to happen. The whole thing. I also enjoyed in the beginning the scenario. They were talking about the driver humming Christmas carols while they were. I was like, really?
Because that's what we do.
I know. Just like you have to make it like as terrifying as possible. Like
just set the ultimate serene picture, and then just how it all comes crashing down.
Your puppy is sitting in the passenger seat. You guys brought up a lot of good points. I have mixed feelings about this stuff. I know the researchers make a big fuss with the press and the scary hypothetical scenarios because they want to create pressure, as you said, for automakers to regulators to actually act. All they need is one congressperson to see this and become a dog with a bone about the security of this stuff. And so that I think that's true. But at the same time, I don't know, exposing some of these vulnerabilities in such a public way, I think assumes that the automakers will act faster than the hackers will, which we know is almost never the case. So I don't know. I always wonder, like, are you planting some ideas here to people that maybe didn't think about that vulnerability, but now will like try to exploit that. I don't know.
When we do the security breach podcast, one of the questions I like to ask a lot of the people we have on is, what helps you sleep at night? Because you're exposed to all this bad stuff that's going on, all the potential vulnerabilities. And one of the things that they talk about is the awareness and how it's elevated so much, especially within the industrial sector over the last 3.5, 4 years. We're having more of these conversations. So while you make a great point, like, are we basically helping the hackers choose their next target?
Yeah.
We're also talking more about it, which not only keeps the suppliers and the manufacturers more engaged in this topic and thinking about it more when they're creating stuff, but even the general consumer.
Yeah.
Now we think a little bit more, but when we're plugging stuff in, we were talking about some emails from, I think it was late last week or early this week, just being more careful on what we're looking at. And that's good. And that's positive. So that's one of the really important roles that, like I said, these guys who position themselves as white hats, ethical hackers, and producing this stuff, that's a vital role they play because it makes us talk about this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a really good point. I just, when they're tossing out phrases like fundamental design change, you kind of wonder what the timeline is there. Yeah. That's all I could think about, because if you look at look at the thing with Kia and Hyundai and trying to fix their stolen car problem. I mean, that's been now years, and that's still kind of on fire. Like, they have not figured that out. So I feel like it is a bit of a double-edged sword, even though some of the visibility is good. Maybe some of the visibility is also bad, but I don't know how you fix that, Yeah. All right. That's up for another day. All right. Our second most popular story this week. Social media company recalls every drone it ever sold. Snap, as in Snapchat. Its Pixie drone was supposed to be a unique option for self-flying aerial photography, but now the device has become another casualty of battery issues. Snap has announced that it is recalling and refunding the purchase price for every Pixie drone it has ever sold, about 71,000 units sold on Amazon and Pixie.com as recently as December. The Pixie, which was released in 2022, is roughly the size of a CD case and was designed to pair with a smartphone, take off from and land in a user's hand. It follows you around then and takes pictures, I guess.
Lots of different modes. Yeah. Do like 3 different things.
This is technology that I am much too old for. At issue is the lithium-ion battery, which can reportedly overheat and possibly catch fire. Snap says that it has received 4 reports of batteries overheating, resulting in 1 minor fire and 1 minor injury. The company is asking consumers to immediately stop using the Pixie, take out the battery, and stop charging it. The company is also recalling separately sold batteries and chargers. Andy, what do you think of the Pixie drone? What are you going to do with all your old Pixie drones? Just,
not that we need more drones in our lives or more people taking pictures of themselves in our lives, but I'd actually not, to no one's surprise, I had not heard of Snapchat's drone before.
Yeah,
but it's actually a pretty slick little thing. It's you hold it in your hand, it takes off, it has predetermined flight patterns. There's no, for someone less technologically inclined, like, I don't know, me, it's the kind of drone it looks like you can just kind of, hit a button and it goes and does its thing, which is, I think that's really interesting technology for someone who's not going to invest thousands of dollars in a cinema grade drone or what have you. So I actually thought it was really neat before it, started on fire and injuring people. So that notwithstanding, we talk about this a lot here. I'm not on the podcast a ton, obviously, but I feel like the last time I was here, we addressed a similar scenario where a lithium-ion battery just started on fire kind of randomly. So it's just another reminder that as these things proliferate, there are certain risks involved. So, by my quick math, which is always dangerous for me in particular, I think 71,000 times it's between $185 and $250. So just at 200, I think that's like $14 million dent on this thing.
That's nothing for Snapchat, right?
Probably not, but still.
It's a lot of Snapchat ads.
That's right.
Yeah. So you would buy it if it was not on fire?
Oh, absolutely not. It's just the kind of drone I could use without slicing my hand off. That's all.
You know what? You could take some great pictures, aerial photos of parades.
I could.
Just saying.
I could.
Quick ones.
Yeah, just quick ones.
And post it on the internet, and what do they vanish? And I've never used Snapchat.
I don't know. Oh, yeah. I think they vanish. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyone Gen Z watching? Please let us know what Snapchat is.
Do they use Gen Z, or do they use Snapchat anymore?
I don't.
They might just use TikTok.
Gen Y.
There you go.
Anyone Gen Y watching?
My daughters use Snapchat.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. So Jeff gets it. Jeff's got a pixie drone. Jeff.
Many of them.
Jeff, tell us about your pixie drone.
I agree with Andy. It is actually a cool product, but I think this is a prime example of a social media company trying to develop a piece of, let's use some loose terms, let's call it technology, if you will, a product, and not maybe fully appreciating all the different technical elements of it. Because when you buy this pixie drone, it says straight up front, like, this is good for like 3 or 4 flights before you have to recharge the battery. A flight is about a minute, according to their math.
Yeah.
So basically, you've got 4 minutes of video on your drone before you have to recharge it. To me, there's just, people are going to be running this thing to the absolute max before it falls out of the sky. That's what that's going to lead to. And we know from lithium-ion batteries, this is what happens when there's this, what do they call it? Spontaneous, basically, power discharge or whatever it is. So this has happened many times before. I think there was a reason Snap all of a sudden sold 70,000 of these and just stopped making them. I think they may have had an idea that there was some issues with not necessarily the batteries, but the way they were being used and the potential for bad things to happen as a result. Because I think their main market here, it obviously wasn't us. Okay, so if you're looking at a younger group, a younger demographic who's, like I said, just going to run this thing till it drops, it's going to be super hot by the time it's done. Depending on where it falls, that could definitely create some fire hazards. It's just going to be hot when you pick it up. Yep. So, yeah, I think they need to understand the product a little bit more before they started putting it out there, and then planning for the worst case scenario too, and putting that out and putting whatever warnings on it you needed to. With lithium-ion batteries, it's funny because we're sort of running this constant product development race against, well, we want it to be light, but we want it to be powerful, but we want it to be light, but we want it to be safe. And all of those things just don't work well together. If you want more power and you want it to last longer, it's going to be heavier, it's going to be bigger, it's going to be bulkier, especially if you want to put it in some enclosure where you don't burn your hand because the battery's running hot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of that discussion too is a consideration of how much of a priority is this very low price? Because when you look at the risk around lithium ion batteries, one of the things that's been generally accepted as true at this point is that the batteries that start fires and explode tend to be using like degraded components, cheaply produced components, foreign stuff that's coming from China, and not very good quality. And so you do kind of wonder too, like, did they have to cut corners on sourcing in order to keep it in that $100, $200 price range? Because for a drone with a camera, there's a lot that you're trying to fit in there for that price point. So just another thing to consider potentially as a problem there. But for me, the thing that stood out the most was I was looking at the recall information, and there was a bunch of information on Pixie's website about the battery disposal instructions. So you're not allowed to send the battery back when if you have the recalled item. They want you to remove them and dispose of them separately. And the guidance on how to do that is it's like visit the EPA's website for information regarding disposal of household hazardous waste, or visit an EPA recommended resource to find nearby household hazardous waste collection points. They're like, don't throw it in the trash. Don't take it to a battery recycling box. They need to be disposed of in accordance with local and state ordinances, following the procedures established by your municipal recycling center. Just like so much detail here. And all I can think about is like, not only do the Pixie owners have to get this message to begin with that there's a recall, but there's this multi-step process about hazardous waste they're supposed to follow that's in addition to the recall refund process. And I hate that stuff because
certainly someone with a Snapchat attention span is going to visit the EPA's website for proper disposal.
Exactly. That's all I can think about is like, these are the same people who can't return their shopping cart to the cart corral. I'm not saying like anything about a demographic there. This is just consumers in general. It's like maybe too much to put on them to fix the safety risk with proper disposal. Just seemed like a lot.
So the term I was looking for was thermal runway.
Thermal runway, yep.
And I'm fortunate because my municipality has, like, when you go to the recycling center, there's just a whole other area for like lithium ion stuff.
Okay.
So it can be simplified, but
but like you're like a responsible person and you're like a dad in your 40s, like that just
And it's Dane County. And
it's Dane County. Yeah, it's just like
No, I
that
get
stuff
that.
is just, I don't know.
How many of these, there's 71,000 sold. How many do you think actually get returned? Because I could see a lot of people who are just liking it, they haven't understand how it works, whatever, don't actually
might not
return
even
this
ever hear
thing.
about it.
Well, you might not hear about it. I mean, if you got it as a gift, it seems like kind of a giftable item. You know, you would have to almost rely on the person who gifted it to you to tell you that it was recalled, or who knows. I don't know. It just, there's a lot of, I mean, we know that recalls there's a lot of gaps in the messaging there. And if you look at automotive, like the recall fix rate is pretty low, and that's like what you're driving on the highway.
And you get something in the mail or your email or whatever telling you that this is going on. Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know that we're going to see a lot of these batteries returned via the EPA's process, but we'll see. All right, our most popular story this week, also a battery story, so buckle up.
Whoa.
2 in a row. This one is about a fire, a $1.3 million fire at a GM plant that was likely caused by punctured batteries. A 3-alarm fire on December 19th brought up to 100 Detroit firefighters to the 11.6 million square foot compound dubbed Factory Zero. This decades-old plant was retooled a few years back in order to become GM's first dedicated EV assembly plant. GM's investigation has led them to believe that the fire broke out due to a forklift's collision with a pallet of EV batteries, where several were allegedly punctured, causing them to ignite. Firefighters reportedly used copious amounts of water and foam, as well as car fire blankets that were given to them by factory workers, and the fire still took 7 hours to fully extinguish. It was reported that the Detroit Fire Department had concerns about the number of recent calls from Factory Zero and were working hand in hand with GM for a better internal protocol for handling these electric vehicle batteries. Factory Zero was said to have sustained about $300,000 in damage due to the fire, with goods and equipment losses at about $1 million. So, Andy, battery story part 2.
That's right.
Yeah, what do you think about this one?
My first impression was kind of, this isn't as much a battery story as it is the kind of manufacturing, industrial safety stuff we talk about constantly here, as far as equipment, forklift safety, and dealing with hazardous materials. I mean, this, you know, in the history of doing this podcast, that probably comes up every week, every other week, something like that.
Yeah.
So it felt like less that's about that than just your kind of standard best practices sort of thing. But on the other hand, I mean, this problem is only going to get worse. I mean, there's billions and billions and billions of dollars of electric vehicle factories and battery plants going up across the country. And this, I mean, it's just pure statistics that the risk of this is going to go up along with it. So, you know, you would hope that, I mean, the auto industry wants to get away from lithium ion batteries for more stable solid state batteries for a lot of reasons, but fire safety is for sure one of them. And you'd hope that one of the side effects of that is that the plants making them and assembling the cars with them in it become safer.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Jeff, what did you think about this story?
Totally disagree. No.
Oh!
That would have been a real hot take, right?
It would have been.
Because it's a fire story.
Yeah, like,
Hot take.
I love factory fires. Jeff Ranke.
Hot take.
Hot take.
Did you get the
I did get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So it definitely, I agree with you, Andy. I think it's obviously more than more than a safety story, in my opinion. It's like infrastructure as well. You know, first of all, just kind of interesting. I was looking at I got curious about forklift safety. I don't know, looking at this story, there's like 100 to 150 forklift accidents per day that involve some sort of injury. Those are not just the ones where product is damaged or something else, but where somebody's actually injured. So even though it's one of the most basic components of a warehouse or an operated distribution center, still a ton of accidents, which is kind of crazy, like, to think about why that's kind of being overlooked. But as we talk about, safety is a culture thing, and we have to continue to talk about it. The other thing with EVs, again, getting back to the infrastructure, we've talked about the grid and trying to improve there in terms of all the things that are going to have to get plugged in now for trying to get away from fossil fuels. Last week, we talked about guardrails and needing those for these heavier electric vehicles.
Yeah.
This is another one from a safety perspective. It's not only training for first responders like this, it's water supply, it's foam. Here they had to borrow stuff from the facility to try to get this under control. So that's going to be another challenge that just sort of keeps adding to the list for EVs I don't mean that as a negative thing. I'm not trying to detract from what we're trying to do in making this switch, but it's got to be another level of investment and understanding that if we're going to go this way, we've picked this route, we can't just dip our toe anymore. We have to really get in up to our elbow and understand what we need to provide there, not just from a driving public, but from a safety. Because like Andy said, this is not the first time we're going to cover this type of story. We've seen this stuff. Actually, we had the Rivian story where we talked about some fires from batteries. This is going to continue to be a case. And the other part of this is, what'd you say, $1 million in damage to this facility?
$300,000 to the facility, $1 million to their product.
Yeah. So there you go. And this is, again, an area where all these OEs are trying to grow it and run it. I know $1.3 million isn't maybe a ton, but it's enough.
It's enough.
So,
not what you want.
No.
Yeah, one of the things that I found to be really interesting about this story is how the fire department kind of went rogue with its revelation to the media here that Factory Zero might be a bit of a nuisance at the moment. Like, yeah, the fire department said that the number of calls that they've been getting from Factory Zero have been too high. And they sort of characterize the situation there that they don't know how to properly handle these batteries. And they actually called it a drain on our resources, which is pretty harsh. A GM spokesperson responded to that, saying that sometimes they call in emergencies regardless of the severity of the incident, and it's not all related to batteries or fires for that matter. That being said, I still don't think it's a stretch to say that there might need to be some more training. I know that forklifts are going to hit pallets, and that's like a manufacturing issue and at its core safety issue. But what is the first line of defense? Because we do have to acknowledge the reality of the fact that these batteries are now kind of front and center in like probably a staging area, and they're not. I mean, if it's a facility full of batteries, there is going to be more risk there. That's just inherent. I think the other challenge, and I think this was reported, that the factory compound is so big, 11.6 million square feet, that the firefighters didn't know exactly where to go when the call came in.
Oh, wow.
And that's something I think that needs to be addressed as well, just as like a baseline. How are you coordinating that layout with these folks so people know when they get there, what door do I go in? What building am I in, And so I don't know if that delay played a role in how long it took to put that fire out. As people have pointed out before, thermal runaway can happen instantly. Yep. So maybe it didn't, but again, that just kind of as a best practice, I think, going forward to consider.
Yeah, I think in these situations, the level of expertise has shifted from the fire department, the first responder, to the manufacturer of that product. They are the subject matter expert, and they need to share that. And we also covered a story this week. It's kind of an ongoing one. I mean, Tesla was fined, $1.5 million for improper disposal of waste materials related to electric vehicles. So if they're doing it wrong, everybody else is going to struggle too. So they definitely need to make it a priority in not only understanding it, but sharing that data. Absolutely.
Yep. All right. Well, before we move on to our In Case You Missed It stories, let's talk about our sponsor today. 10 years ago, many were skeptical about the predicted 1.5 million battery electric vehicle sales by 2021. Nonetheless, reality has surpassed those expectations. So today, experts foresee continued growth in the plug-in vehicle market. This white paper from Parker covers 9 emerging trends that are shaping the future of electric transportation and how they are impacting other industries. Download the 9 emerging trends in electric transportation. The link is below. Please take a look. Check it out. All right. In case you missed it, Andy, do you want to start us off here? What did you choose this week?
Yeah, you guys want to talk about Soot?
I want to talk about Soot. I'm glad you brought up Soot.
All right. It's not the most exciting story, I don't think, but maybe of all the ones I looked at this week, this may have the biggest impact. I guess we'll see. But the Environmental Protection Agency this week published a rule that will cut the nation's threshold for soot pollution by 25%. So a decade ago, the EPA standard for what's called fine particle pollution. So that's pollution from smokestacks and vehicles to wildfires, basically any source of ambient air pollution. They set that at 12 micrograms per cubic meter of air. And that means that counties, other jurisdictions have to be below that. And if they're above that, they'll try and push you down to below that. So it doesn't target particular companies or industries. It just says this is the air pollution threshold. So this new standard would cut it down to 9 micrograms. And the reason this impacts industry is because, at least in the short term, for counties that don't meet that threshold, it could be trickier for companies to build new facilities there or expand facilities if it would have an impact on the air quality. Now, the EPA says that most area, 99%, I think they said, of areas will be able to meet the new standard by the early 2030s. And there's all sorts of caveats here that go along with the administrative rulemaking process at the federal level. It's almost certainly going to get challenged in court. The entire process itself is kind of up in the air in the Supreme Court at the moment. So it's definitely, that notwithstanding, it's definitely something to monitor as we go forward.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I always feel like you can be pro industrial manufacturing and also pro air quality. Personally,
I feel like it's, it's Washington. So it's, kind of framed as this pitched battle between environmental interest and industry. And I'm kind of the same way. I kind of feel like that's a false choice. Yes,
I agree. And I know that people always, you're always going to get pushback to this stuff. People say that it's arbitrary, it's unachievable, it's not, it's expensive. But it does, even when these are challenged, it does force companies to start looking at how they're going to achieve the goal, even during that appeal process, which means some of them just go for it anyway. They're buying the technology, they're implementing the stuff, they're making some changes. And if we can make any progress there, I think it's just good for everyone. That's just my opinion. Jeff, what do you think about the story?
Completely disagree. No. No, cleaner is always better. Okay. And we do have to hold people's feet to the fire to make them change their ways. The big thing with this, I think this is great. This can be 1A, but 1B in here also has to be providing the industrial sector with ways to then meet these standards. And the good thing is we do have the tools and technology to do that, but making sure they're accessible, they're affordable, providing support in order to put those things in place is also got to be a big part of all these legislative moves. And I think that's the thing that gets overlooked sometimes. And I think that's also what could sort of bring both sides together a little more quickly and understanding, hey, we all want it cleaner, but you got to help me out a little bit in determining an effective way to not only meet these standards, but also keep my doors open and keep people employed. And we can do that. This isn't that overly complicated.
Yeah.
We just need to take both parts of the equation into perspective.
Absolutely. Yep. All right. My, in case you missed it this week, was about a new spacesuit that has completed key zero gravity tests. So Collins Aerospace, ILC Dover, and Oceaneering together have completed the crew capability assessment test, a key step in the design process on its next-gen spacesuit for the ISS. The Collins team validated suit performance in a manufactured zero-gravity environment on board an aircraft, performing a series of demonstrations performed by experienced former NASA astronauts. The primary objectives of the flight test include evaluation of the suit's pressure garment, system fit and functionality, use of ISS tools and interfaces, and reviewed performance of the new Extra Vehicular Mobility Unit, or EMU, against the current design. The test allowed us to examine specific objectives of the design that can support a broad range of crew member sizes and crew tasks in a controlled environment, said Collins. Collins' next-gen suit is lighter weight and lower volume than NASA's current spacesuit. It's an open architecture design. It's pretty exciting. I think it's an exciting step forward in this sorely needed initiative. It was widely reported that this spacesuit redesign that's taking place the last couple years is the first redesign in 40 years. The original design didn't take into consideration women's different body sizes, obviously not evolving tech needs. These are meant to be much more comfortable. They're lighter, they're safer, they're more capable. And I think key in the support of the Artemis mission. And Collins is not the only contracted company that's working on suits. We're seeing multiple firms working on these projects with different applications in mind. Yeah. And I love to see the updates because in a world of the thing that leads to the thing, this is such a practical need right now. I mean, we have Artemis, really we're on the verge of doing that, sending people back to the moon. This is long overdue, and they're making a ton of progress too. So pretty exciting to see. Jeff, what did you think of this story?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, being able to customize this more to certain body types, I think is critical. I mean, you'd never want the best and brightest to be limited based on the suit they have to wear to go there. So it makes sense there. The other thing that I always think about with any of these types of developments, I mean, you said the thing that leads to the thing, but all the materials that are incorporated into this type of application, just where it can go from there is incredible. Not just for space exploration or anything else, but when we look at the military and different types of protective equipment that have been developed directly from space. I'm not a huge fan of Velcro, but even looking at something as simple as that and the applications it's provided, it started with NASA. That's where Velcro started. So all the things that can continue to evolve and come from these types of developments, I think are amazing. So that's why it's always cool to hear about these. And I think some people get bent out of shape when they see the price tag for some of these suits individually. But that is part of the process.
I mean, they're going into space. What are you going to do?
Right.
I know.
Yeah, ask for a discount? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Get the suit at $5 below.
I like that it looked like your conventional astronaut suit you picture in your head when you picture the Apollo guys. It's not SpaceX type dystopian, black suit. It looks like it's a white suit with a big helmet. It looks like an astronaut. So I like that.
Right. You want it to be like a protagonist looking suit and
That's
not
right.
an antagonist.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Also, the zero gravity environment aboard an aircraft. We're talking about the vomit comet there, right? You guys familiar with that?
No.
I thought that was the thing that went. Is that the thing that goes in a circle?
It goes. I think it goes kind of in a parabola shape. Is that what I'm thinking of? It's been a long time since calculus, but it goes up to simulate.
Yep.
So I just wondered if
the vomit comet.
That's what I had heard it called, and I just colloquially. So I don't know if they mentioned that specifically, but that's immediately what I thought of when I read this story.
I hope that's NASA's official name for it. I'm sure it
might
is.
be their unofficial name for it.
Also, really glad to find out that Jeff hates Velcro.
Yeah.
I didn't say hated it.
You just said, I'm not a huge fan of Velcro. And you just slipped it in there like that was a normal thing to say.
Okay, because initially my first thought of Velcro is shoes. And growing up, the girls had like Velcro shoes.
Sure.
And it just bothered me. It's like,
just the sound?
Just learn to tie your shoes.
The noise or?
No, I just thought it was like an unnecessary shortcut. I didn't like it.
Look at this guy.
Now, it has other things, straps, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Great. But it just bugged me when they would have Velcro shoes.
I hope my kids wear Velcro shoes forever. I hope they never learn how to tie their shoes.
I can remember many tearful moments teaching my older daughter to tie her shoes because she's like, but I just got the Velcro. No, you're going to learn. That was me.
You snip the Velcro.
We don't
We're learning today. Okay, Jeff. Well, good to know.
Yeah.
What was your, in case you missed it?
I don't feel dismissed at all. More important one here, I picked an article talking about the Manufacturing Institute released a report on transitioning military talent. I thought this was a cool story just because it kind of backed up a lot of things we talk about anecdotally and just sort of assume and know, but it provided some real, meat behind the fact that all these folks coming out of the military, looking at 200,000 people who are getting out of the military every year, manufacturing is a great home for it. And it just reinforced all that. So the Manufacturing Institute released a report on how manufacturers can optimize their recruitment and retention efforts for military-connected talent. The report highlights studies from the Make America initiative. It has testimonials from leading manufacturers and from a military-affiliated manufacturing teams that illustrate just some of the best practices in recruiting and retaining these folks that have just a ton of inherent skills that are a perfect fit for manufacturing. NAM has put out that study, and we've talked about it a number of times. They're looking at like 2 million unfilled manufacturing jobs by 2030, which, by the way, that's a lot closer now that it's 2024 than when we were talking about that a couple of years ago, and it hasn't changed. So just some of the highlights here that I thought were kind of cool. The talent pool is large. They said approximately 200,000 service members leaving each year. 8.6 million veterans were employed in 2022 with 12% of them in manufacturing. So it kind of led the way there. There's a number of different things. I'm not going to go through the entire article. But I think one of the biggest things that it reinforced too was how human resources associates, individuals in that part of the company need to get more affiliated with local military bases and other veteran services organizations just to put their name out there. Because if they're having trouble filling jobs, which we know is an ongoing challenge in manufacturing, just make yourself known. It's that conversation and reaching out to as many different outlets as possible to see who's out there. And it's worked for all of these companies, and they're just seeing tremendous results from really tapping into that veteran workforce. So it's cool to see the Manufacturing Institute involved with it. And again, reinforcing a lot of the stuff that we knew when it comes to people being more loyal to their employers, attention to detail, Boeing, all of those things. Another area that's interesting, again, doing the Security Breach podcast and a focus on cybersecurity, there are a lot of people getting out of the military with those skills. Mm-hmm. Security is an inherent part of everything you do in the military, especially now with soldiers having so much more access through mobile devices to data and understanding they need to keep it secure on the battlefield and when they come off of it. Just as a prime example, we talked to a lot of Israeli firms who have cybersecurity as that's their business, that's their startup, how they got going. And a lot of that emanates from the fact that you serve in the military in Israel for a certain number of years. It's mandated. Mm-hmm. And when those folks come out, those are the skills they have. And it's led to that part of the world having some of the leading cybersecurity firms available. So again, untapped potential here in the U.S. and cool story.
Yeah, totally. And you're right. I mean, it's not that hard to draw those conclusions as to what the implications here would be. And, right now I feel like the solid economic reports that we keep getting over and over and over again that people are maybe not even expecting at this point, blowing people's expectations, there's still sort of a mixed bag for manufacturers because of the labor challenge. There's still all these unfilled jobs, and that's going to limit the productivity of those companies and their ability to be profitable if they can't get their arms around that problem. And I think it's a great reminder to look at some of these groups of folks that are really like a locked in fit, perfect fit, skill wise, and trying to target those folks. What about you, Andy? What do you think of this story?
I don't think anyone's terribly surprised by the fact that this report points out what an asset these people are to the companies that end up hiring them. I thought the most important thing was the last bullet point here about having internal systems in place to know whether or not you're properly going after these applicants, retaining them, hiring them, that sort of thing. So having concrete ways to actually go about this rather than saying, these are good workers. Like, we know that, we get it. So
yes,
that was the main thing for me.
Yeah, totally. And I think Jeff and I just had a conversation about this week about AI and what the role that can play in manufacturing companies, and not so much on the factory floor as much as it may be in the back office or the front office of folks trying to collaborate data and analyze it, and stuff like that for so many years is sort of anecdotal, like who has a good performance report or what their background is. There's a lot of variables and details that you need to condense and make consumable and figure out how to leverage. And that's what AI could do in manufacturing, potentially going forward. So a lot going on there. But okay, so final thought time. I'm going to start with Andy because he is a guest today. I'm sure he's got a great final thought for us.
I usually struggle with this, but I'm headed on the road early next week, so I'll just go with that. I'm going to the Grainger show in Florida, so that'll be interesting, I believe. So
have you been to the Grainger show before?
I've not been. Somehow, for people who aren't in this racket, most of the trade shows are in Las Vegas or Orlando. It seems like I've been to Las Vegas a couple times, never been to Orlando. Somehow missed that one. So I'll experience the Orlando trade show environment for the first time. I'm trying to find somewhere adequate to watch the Super Bowl that's not just alone in my hotel room. So we'll see how that goes. I can't, I'm trying to, there's this dichotomy in my head between that sad scenario and like a Applebee's or whatever. So I'm trying to find the sweet spot in the middle.
Yeah.
Doesn't Grainger have something planned?
I'm not going.
Well, anyway, I've been to the Grainger show before, and it's pretty cool. Like, they have lots of executives there, lots of displays, tons of suppliers. So there's like tons of industrial companies kind of showing off their wares. So it's a lot of ground to cover, of course, but usually an interesting event. And at least it's not. I mean, Wisconsin in February is a little bit bleak.
Yeah, I'm not brokenhearted about getting out of here for a couple of days. I won't lie.
Understood.
Yeah.
What I would say with Orlando, once you get through the airport, I've never had trouble in Orlando, but the airport it's a mess. It's a lot. It is a lot.
We have flown into there for vacation, not for trade shows. I can't imagine trade shows make it any better though.
The advice I would give in trying to find a place with a Super Bowl, I know this is going to sound odd, but there's so many like chain type restaurant, bar type things in Orlando that actually the best bars I've found just to hang out in were in like strip malls.
Okay.
Like if you can find like a non-franchise type bar in a strip mall type place in Orlando, you'll probably be in pretty good shape. I know that sounds kind of weird, but
I mean, hey, it's not everywhere can be Wisconsin's tavern culture. So
exactly.
to each their own.
Yeah.
True.
All right. So Jeff is pro strip mall, bar, anti Velcro. We've learned a lot about Jeff today. My final thought today.
I'm the same person on air, Anna. I don't hide my true identity.
My true identity. I'm a monster behind closed doors. My final thought is I wanted to wish a happy birthday to my adorable 9-year-old daughter who turned, 9 yesterday. And I always tease her that on the night she was born, her dad and I ordered a pizza and then had to go to the hospital and I never got to eat the pizza. So she owes me a pizza, but she has not paid me back on that pizza still. Someday.
I'll echo that. Happy birthday to her. For
Yes.
sure. Wonderful.
Thanks. She got a bunch of cool Squishmallow stuff. So she was pretty jacked up. And like 9-year-old girls are really into corgis, apparently. I don't know why, because they're so soft, I guess.
They're funny looking. No, they're funny
they're
looking.
funny dogs.
My middle
Yeah.
daughter went through a corgi stage too.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know why, but
So we're stocked up with corgi pajamas.
Should I ever ask Amanda about corgis?
Yeah.
She'll tell you all about it.
Oh, I did ask her. Yes. Andy's wife is a vet. And I will never tell Avery what Amanda said
we'll
about
keep that to
corgis.
ourselves. It'll be fine.
All right, Jeff, what's your final thought?
So even though the weather's been incredibly mild, I am excited. This weekend I'm going ice fishing.
What?
Yes, believe it or not.
Did you find some?
Where
Is
I'm
that-
going.
is that safe?
Yes, it is. Well, would you guys go ice fishing right now?
No. It's 50 degrees outside.
Yeah, not if I wanted to not go swimming.
Also,
where I'm going, there is
also
still
I would never go ice fishing anyway, but like
There's still like 6 to 8 inches of ice on the lakes that I'll be going to this weekend. So we should be safe there. But I did stumble across a Charlie Barron's video where he's talking about being a Midwesterner and it's going out on 2 inches of ice to catch 3 small perch. That did kind of echo in my mind. Like, is this the right idea?
risk your life.
There's plenty of people out there and they have successfully ventured onto and off of the ice. So I'm looking forward to it, especially because with the mild temperature, it should actually be better fishing.
Yeah.
So
Oh, okay.
I am very stoked about that.
Nice.
Are you going to Eagle River?
I am.
Oh man, I'm so jealous. I love Eagle
I
River.
know. So I'm looking forward. I've had fine just catching panfish, but I'm trying to get something like bigger. Like I want some big walleye or northern or something like that. So, in trying to engage more with our audience, if anybody has some good like fishing pictures that they want to share, we could definitely swap those in for some canned koozies or t-shirts, whatever you're looking for, in exchange for some fan fishing pictures.
All right. Yeah, let's see what you got. All right. Well, that's about it for us today. Let's please make sure that you like and subscribe to and share the podcast if you can. Email us if you'd like with email the podcast in the subject line. That's Jeff, Anna, or Andy at in.com. Subscribe to our newsletters. Please, please, please. We would love to reach you every day and just hassle you every day with email. For Jeff and Andy, I'm Anna. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.